covered a lot of ways to persevere, to be in community with other like-minded people, to pray and ask people for prayer, to focusing on Jesus to empower you, asking for hope from the Holy Spirit, getting rid of things that are hindering whatever God is moving us toward, and getting rid of the sin that tangles us up. I have 2 final ways I want to share with you to keep on going. So I've given our kids some specific chores to do to earn a bit of an allowance as a way to kind of help them learn personal money management. And I've given them the jobs, but they have to remember to do them. And occasionally I remind them, and if they do them, they get paid. And if they don't do them, well, no pay. So I usually check their bedrooms in the morning after they've gone to school to see that their room is clean and they've made their bed. So I promise my kids, I will never do this again. But it makes a good point. So let's check out Isaac's room. Okay, pirates only, no trespassing. Let's see. Oh no. Oh boy. Mostly I care. Oh, the bed is not made. Oh boy. So I guess he won't be earning cash for that job today. Let's check out Olivia's room. Okay, let's check out Olivia's room. What? Ho 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 ho! So I guess Olivia gets paid today. You know, Olivia especially gives herself ways to remember what she's been given to do. She writes it down on her calendar and stuff, and she is kind of that way personality-wise. And that's what we need to do. We need to give ourselves ways to remember the mission God has given us. That's why we have to remember our mission. In 1 Timothy chapter 4, it says, "Don't neglect the spiritual gift in the way that it was given you through prophecy when the elders laid hands on you. Practice these things and live by them so that your progress will be visible to all." Paul is talking to Timothy here, and what he's doing is he's reminding Timothy that of that special time when he was given specific ministry by God and the spiritual community around him that put their hands on him and prayed for Timothy and sent him off to do some great things. How has God spoken to you? When were the times you really recall God impacting you in a big way? When did a servant of God instill and inspire you with purpose and a specific role to play? It's important to remember that so that it stirs up in you again and you remember the mission that you've been given. So I attended Emmanuel Bible College in Kitchener, Ontario, and I remember when I felt God asking me to apply to our student council at that school. And it was an affirmation process, and I was applying for the role of the president of student council. So me and another guy each shared a speech, and we were interviewed by a discernment committee. And I felt really confident, but I ended up not being affirmed for that role. Well, it kind of hurt, and I doubted that I even had heard God correctly. The other guy got the role of president, and what made it even more difficult for me was that the president of the college, like the head guy, had told me he was surprised that I was not affirmed for that job. And that kind of made me angry with the whole process of discernment, that they weren't listening to God. So then the student council asked me if I would serve as the secretary for the student council. Well, that kind of seemed like they were just throwing me a bone, and I was too proud for a lesser role as I perceived it. And God said to me, do you want to serve me? I've created you to serve other people, and if this is the role in which I choose to do it, why would you say no? So I had no good reason other than selfish ones to say no to it, so I said yes. Well, by the time September was rolling around, I was called by the Dean of Students and asked to step into the role of president for the student council because the person that was selected was not able to do it for unspecified reasons. I learned an important lesson from God about being humble, about saying yes, and I was placed in the role that I originally thought God was telling me to serve in. I had to remember the promise God gave me originally and refresh it in my heart so that by stirring it up again, it caused me to act and have momentum and not give up. It's the same principle to having trusted people hold me accountable to things I say that I want to do, things I need to be, I want to follow through, but without accountability, it's easy for me to just flake out. So what's the promise God has given you? Don't forget it. Remembering those times will anchor your soul when everything around you seems to be unsettled, and your mission will be refreshed and you can keep on going. Choose not to be discouraged. Now, do you get tired and discouraged? If you say no, I think maybe that you lied. We all do at certain times, but oftentimes we choose to stay there. Stay in those thoughts. We set up camp, we wallow in those thoughts and feelings, we get all stuck in our head, and we just end up staying there. Like poo. Galatians chapter 6 verse 9 says, "Let's not get tired of doing good, because in time we'll have a harvest if we don't give up." You will reap a harvest if you don't give up. The question is, will you? Don't give up. The enemy wishes to discourage you so that you'll give up and quit. When I am discouraged, I'm saying it can't be done. Well, that's the exact opposite of saying, I know God can do it because He said. And the words in the Bible say that you need to resist discouragement. Nothing really worthwhile is ever easy. It always takes persistence. In 1923, leading up to the 1924 Olympics, Eric Liddell, the guy from the Chariots of Fire movie, he ran the 440 in a competition between England, Ireland, and Scotland. And when the gun sounded, there was a lot of shoving to get in front of like to the inside lane. And he ended up tangling feet with J.J. Gillies of England, and he tumbled to the track. And he kind of sat there dazed for a moment, not knowing whether he could get up. And when the official screamed, "Get up, run!" he jumps to his feet and he takes off after the pack. And now all these runners are a good 20 yards ahead of him. And in a quarter mile, that's a big distance to try to make up. And so in his kind of unorthodox style of running, he takes off after all the other runners that are ahead of him. And he pulls into fourth place, 10 yards behind the leader, J.J. Gillies. With 40 yards to go, he pulls into third place, then second place. And right at the tape, he passes Gillies, stuck his chest out, wins the race, and collapses to the track in total exhaustion. He did not give up. He kept on going. What trips you up? What discourages you and gets you knocked down? Is it your kid? Your marriage? The fact that you can't have children? A job loss? Finances? Health? Maybe some other person is opposing you. Let's take a minute to ask God. I want you to ask God, what is discouraging me? And then listen in prayer. What comes to your mind? Write it down and then ask God to give you courage in the face of that thing, to help you rise above it, move forward in it. Let's take a minute to pray. God, would you give us strength in the face of these discouragements? Would you give us courage to rise above them, to move forward through them by your strength and your power? I want to take a moment to say something to you that may sound mean, and I say this because of love. If you're living in discouragement, that's your choice. Discouragement is always a choice. You don't have to be discouraged. Courage is moving forward even when we feel down, afraid, uncertain. Discouragement comes from thinking discouraging thoughts, but you can change your thinking. It's not easy, and if you need help, let me know. We all need guidance at times to figure out how to change our thought patterns that we've set for ourselves. The question is, what will you choose to focus on? Your purpose or your problems? Will you focus on God's power or will you focus on your weaknesses? Will you focus on Jesus or will you focus on your circumstances? I love this verse in 2 Timothy chapter 2. It says, if we are disloyal, Jesus stays faithful because he can't be anything else than what he is. Everything good you could desire, that's Jesus. He can't be anything that he's not. Instead of looking at that huge disappointment that you're facing, you can choose to look at God's goodness yesterday, his presence today, and his promises tomorrow. People of faith choose to fight discouragement. They consciously remind themselves, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. That's what faith is all about. They remember, God says, I will never leave you or forsake you. Now, is it a sin to dwell on negative thoughts? Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 says, from now on, brothers and sisters, if anything is excellent and if anything is admirable, focus your thoughts on these things. All that is true, all that is holy, all that is just, all that is pure, all that is lovely, and all that is worthy of praise. So if I choose not to follow this advice, I guess I'm disobeying it. And those negative thoughts are self-fulfilling. It's like if I tell you not to think about a pink cow. It happens just because I mentioned it. In telling yourself not to think of all the negative, you're dwelling on them. Then you become discouraged. Then you quit running and you're out of the race. And it often happens just before God was about to do something through your life as an instrument to bring renewal to yourself and help to another person. Inside you're saying, God, I just can't take it anymore. Well, the question is, can you? God is with you. Recall what the Hebrew writer said in chapter 12, verse 4. In your struggle against sin, you haven't resisted yet to the point of shedding blood. You've got to rely on Christ or you will drop out of the race. You will throw in the towel and give up. Don't tell yourself all the things you shouldn't be and the things you shouldn't do. Speak the things that you are, the truth of who Jesus says you are, the truth of what you can do and be in Christ. Think about those things. Don't yield to the temptation to quit. Be patient. Be strong in the Lord and in his might and power. Wait on him. Pray. Persevere. Be motivated by this example. In 1992, in the Olympics in Barcelona, there was a memorable moment of sports history. Derek Redmond of Great Britain was on his way to fulfilling a lifetime dream. He had earned a spot in the semifinals of the 400-meter race. And as the gun sounded to start the race, Derek got off to a great start. He's in 4th place and he's running the race of his life and the finish line is in sight when he suddenly feels a stab of pain in his right leg. He falls face first to the track with a torn hamstring. The race is over for him. He struggles to his feet before the medical team could even reach him. And though every runner has passed him and finished the race, he begins hopping forward with tears of pain and disappointment streaking down his face. He's determined to finish this race. Suddenly, a man plows through the security guards on the sideline and runs onto the track. He races up to Derek and hugs him and says, "You don't have to do this." This is the runner's dad, Jim Redmond. And Derek says to his dad, "Yes, I do." Well, then his father says, "We're going to finish the race together." Derek's father gripped his son around the shoulders and they faced the finish line, waving off the security people who are hovering around them, and they limp together, hopping together. Derek's head sometimes buried in his father's shoulder and staying in Derek's lane all the way to the end. The onlooking crowd was stunned at first by this unusual scene, and then one by one, they rise to their feet and they begin cheering and crying at this son's determination and the father's support.
And the applause swelling throughout Olympic Stadium as Redmond, with assistance this time, approaches the finish line he had wanted so desperately to reach.
I want to say one more tough thing, but I want to try to be gentle with it. Are you a shoulder to help someone to finish the race? Or are you a foot to trip someone and keep them from reaching the finish line? I want to encourage you to reach out to another person to help them get up and get on with the race of renewing themselves and renewing the church. When I come to the end of my life, I want to be able to say, I finished the race. I did what you put me on earth to do, God. I wasn't just a self-focused person caught up with my own stuff. I gave my life away. I helped other people. I didn't just think about me. I did what you put me here to do. Acts 13 again says, David served God's purpose in his own generation. Then he died and was buried with his ancestors. He experienced death's decay. Serve your purpose. Then we go on. Galatians chapter 6. Let's not get tired of doing good, because in time we will have a harvest if we don't give up. Keep on going in the tough stuff to find personal spiritual renewal, and you will inevitably help bring renewal to God's people, God's church, your community of faith, your family, your village. Peace. I just want to encourage you to hit all the like buttons on this video. It helps us to know that you're watching. As well, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page and our Instagram, and do ask how you can be included in one of our tiny village churches.